Excuse me, are you with the setup crew? The voice dropped from above, sharp and dismissive. I was kneeling on the marble floor of the Helix Tower lobby, realigning the architectural model because the support beam was off by 2 millimeters. I looked up. Nicole, the wife of my CEO, stood there extending a crumpled, wine-stained napkin toward me. "Someone spilled near the entrance," she said, not even making eye contact. "Clean it up before the VIPs arrive." Behind her, 3 executives, men I hired, snickered into their drinks. I froze. In the building I built from the ground up, I had just been handed the trash. Have you ever been the smartest person in the room, but treated like the least important? Tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one. I took the napkin. It was linen, heavy and expensive, embroidered with a logo I had sketched on the back of an electric bill 15 years ago. Nicole did not see the architect. She saw a jumpsuit. She saw a woman on her knees. She saw a problem to be wiped away before the photographers arrived. I did not stand up immediately. I stayed there for a second, feeling the cold marble against my knees. The same marble I had personally sourced from a quarry in Italy, to ensure the vein patterns flowed like water. What Nicole did not know, what the snickering executives did not know, was that I was not just staff. I was the 65% majority shareholder. I was the reason they had jobs. I was the reason Nicole was wearing a dress that cost more than my first car. I looked at the stain on the floor. Red wine. Shiraz, probably. 15 years ago, I did not have gala invites. I had a garage that smelled like mildew and a space heater that only worked on Tuesdays. I was 19, surviving on $100,000 my grandmother left me, trying to break into an industry that looked at women like we were structural liabilities. I remembered the meetings where contractors would not look me in the eye. I remembered the banks that laughed at my sketches. I remembered eating instant oatmeal for dinner for 3 years straight so I could pay for the steel permits. I built this firm with sweat equity and sleepless nights, fighting for every inch of concrete. While Jeffrey, my current CEO, was still trying to figure out how to sell timeshares in Florida. I was not here tonight for the champagne. I was here for Rachel. My niece was standing 10 feet away, pressed against a pillar, clutching her sketchbook. She is 15, the same age this company was. She wants to be a designer. I had brought her here tonight to show her what was possible. I wanted her to see that if you keep your head down and do the work, eventually you get to stand inside the thing you built. But right now, she was not seeing a triumph. She was seeing her aunt, the genius, being treated like the help. I saw the confusion on Rachel's face, the hurt. She knew who I was. She knew I designed the Helix Tower. She was waiting for me to scream, to throw the napkin back, to fire everyone in the room. But you do not build a skyscraper by reacting to every gust of wind. You build it by having a foundation that can absorb the shock. If I made a scene now, I would just be the emotional woman they all expected me to be. I would be the hysterical creative. I would validate every whisper Jeffrey had started about me being difficult. No. This was not the moment for demolition. This was the moment for inspection. I looked at Nicole. She was tapping her foot, impatient. She had no idea she was standing on a trapdoor. I stood up slowly, dusting off my knees. I looked at Rachel and gave her a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Watch this, I thought. Watch how we handle a structural failure. I did not say a word. I just folded the napkin in my hand. Once you are done, Nicole said, checking her reflection in the glass of the display case. Take the soiled linens down the service elevator. We do not want the guests seeing trash. She turned her back on me to signal the conversation was over. I looked at the service elevator. It was a freight lift I had designed specifically for heavy load-bearing steel, capable of carrying 4 tons. Now, I was being told to use it to carry a napkin. I knelt down. I wiped the wine from the floor. To anyone watching, I probably looked defeated. A woman in a jumpsuit scrubbing a floor while men in tuxedos laughed. But in my head, I was not scrubbing. I was running a diagnostic. How did we get here? How did the founder of a $750 million firm end up on her knees at her own anniversary gala? It did not happen tonight. That is the trap. That is the thing nobody tells you about structural collapse. It is rarely a sudden explosion. It is usually a slow, quiet erosion. In engineering, we call it the normalization of deviance. It means that when you accept a small safety violation and nothing terrible happens, you stop seeing it as a violation. You start seeing it as the new standard. It started 5 years ago when Jeffrey, my CEO, forgot to put my name on a press release. He called it an oversight. I accepted it because I did not want to seem petty. Then it was a meeting rescheduled without asking me. Then it was a client dinner I was not invited to because they wanted to talk business, not design. Then it was Jeffrey, referring to my architectural team as support staff. I let it happen. I was so obsessed with the work, with the steel and the glass, and the vision, that I ignored the rot in the foundation. I normalized the disrespect. I treated their arrogance like background noise instead of a warning siren. I taught them that I was safe to ignore. I taught them that Phoebe the architect would always stay in the back room, drafting the plans, while they stood on the stage, taking the applause. I absorbed the small cracks in the culture, until the cracks became the culture. And now, here I was. The normalization was complete. To Nicole, I was not a person. I was a function. I was maintenance. I finished wiping the floor. The marble was spotless. I stood up, holding the wine-soaked napkin. It was heavy, sodden, and cold. I looked at Rachel. She was not looking at the floor anymore. She was looking at me. Her eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of confusion and fear. She was watching her aunt, her hero, accept the role of a servant. That was the variable I had not accounted for. I could tolerate the disrespect for myself. I had a high threshold for stress. But I could not let Rachel believe this was her future. I could not let her normalize this. The diagnostic was complete. The structure was unsound. It was time to condemn the building. I did not head for the service elevator. I walked past the marble columns. I walked straight toward the main entrance, where Jeffrey, my CEO, was stepping out of a black town car. He was laughing at something on his phone, adjusting his cufflinks. He looked polished, expensive, like the face of a $750 million company. Then he looked up and saw me. He saw the jumpsuit. He saw the wine-stained napkin in my hand. And for a split second, I saw the panic flicker in his eyes. He knew exactly who I was. He knew exactly what that napkin meant. "Phoebe," he said, forcing a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. "I did not realize you were mingling." I did not smile back. I held up the napkin. "Your wife asked me to clean this up," I said. My voice was calm, clinical. Jeffrey's smile faltered. "Nicole? She must have made a mistake. She does not know. She does not know who I am?" I interrupted. "Or she does not know that people who clean floors deserve basic human decency?" Nicole walked up behind me then, annoyed. "Did you take care of that spill?" she asked, not looking at Jeffrey. "The photographers are setting up." Jeffrey looked between us. He looked at his wife, oblivious in her couture gown. He looked at me, the woman who signed his paychecks, holding her trash. "Nicole," he said, his voice tight. "This is Phoebe." "So?" she asked. "This is Phoebe," he repeated, slower this time. "The architect. The founder." Nicole stopped. She looked at me. Really looked at me for the first time. Her eyes went from my boots to my jumpsuit to my face. The realization hit her like a cold draft. "Oh," she said. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the sound of a power dynamic shifting. I handed the napkin to Jeffrey. "I think you should take care of this," I said. Then, I turned to Rachel. "Come on," I said. "We are leaving." "But the gala," Jeffrey stammered. The investors are here to see the building," I said. "The building is not going anywhere, but I am." We walked out the front doors, past the valet stand, past the red carpet. The cool night air hit my face, and for the first time in 5 years, I felt like I could breathe. In the car, Rachel was quiet. She watched the city lights blur past the window. "Why did she treat you like that?" she asked finally. Her voice was small. "Because she thinks power is something you wear," I said. I looked at Rachel in the rearview mirror. I needed her to understand this. I needed her to know that what she just saw was not strength. It was a costume. There are two kinds of authority, Rachel: position power and personal power. Position power is what Nicole has. It comes from a title, or money, or who you are married to. It is external. It is fragile. You have to defend it constantly because without the props, it disappears. That is why she was so rude. She needs to put people down to feel like she is up. I tapped the steering wheel. Personal power is different. It comes from what you can do. It comes from what you have built. Nobody can give it to you, and nobody can take it away. I could be wearing a trash bag, and I would still be the architect of that tower. Rachel nodded slowly. So you won? I smiled. A cold, sharp smile. Not yet, I said. But the inspection is over. Now, we start the demolition. I pulled out my phone. It was 11:58 p.m. I opened my calendar app and created a new event. Subject: Emergency Board Meeting. Time: 6 a.m. Location: Conference Room. B. Agenda: Structural Integrity. I hit send. I arrived at the office at 5:45 a.m. The building was quiet, the only sound, the hum of the HVAC system. I unlocked the conference room, turned on the lights, and set my laptop on the mahogany table. This table cost $40,000. I knew that because I approved the purchase order 3 years ago. At 5:55, the door opened. Jeffrey walked in. He looked tired, his tie slightly askew, carrying a travel mug of coffee. He stopped when he saw me. "Phoebe?" he said, checking his watch. "It is 6 a.m. What is this about?" "Sit down, Jeffrey," I said. He hesitated, then took the seat at the head of the table. "Typical. Is this about last night?" he asked, leaning back, trying to affect an air of casual authority. "Look, Nicole feels terrible. It was a misunderstanding. She did not know who you were. She did not know who I was," I repeated. "Exactly. It was an honest mistake. She thought you were staff. And that makes it okay?" I asked. Jeffrey sighed, rubbing his temples. "Phoebe, do not be dramatic." She was stressed. It was a big event. "She apologized, didn't she?" "No," I said. "She did not. She asked if I took care of the spill." Jeffrey waved a hand dismissively. "You are overreacting. Nicole is not the problem here. The problem is you showing up to a black tie gala in a jumpsuit looking like a mechanic. You have to admit, it was confusing." I opened my laptop. "It was not confusing, Jeffrey. It was revealing." I turned the screen toward him. "This is a graph of our female employee retention over the last 5 years, I said. "Since you became CEO, 58% of our female architects and engineers have resigned." Jeffrey frowned. "What does this have to do with anything?" "Everything," I interrupted. I clicked to the next slide. Exit interviews. Leadership is dismissive. Credit is routinely stolen. I was asked to make coffee during a design review. I was told my tone was too aggressive. "The culture you have built isn't just rude, Jeffrey. It is structurally unsound. It is toxic. Nicole's behavior last night wasn't an anomaly, it was a symptom. She treats people like servants because she watches you treat people like servants." Jeffrey laughed, a short, sharp bark. "You are serious? You called an emergency board meeting at 6 a.m. because my wife hurt your feelings? I am calling a board meeting because you are a liability." I stood up. I walked over to the architectural model of the Helix Tower that stood in the corner of the room. It was perfect. Precise. Every beam, every strut, every pane of glass accounted for. "Do you know why this building works, Jeffrey?" I asked, touching the spire. "Because the load is distributed. Because every part supports every other part. If one beam fails, the whole thing comes down." I turned back to him. "You are a failing beam." Jeffrey stood up, his face reddening. "Now listen here. I have doubled our revenue in 5 years. I have landed clients you could not even get a meeting with. I am the face of this company. You are the silent partner. You draw the pretty pictures. I sell them." "You sell them?" I asked quietly. "Yes. I sell the vision. I sell the genius. I am the reason we are a $750 million firm. Is that so?" I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick file folder. I slid it across the mahogany table. "Then explain this." Jeffrey opened the folder. His hands were shaking slightly, just enough to rustle the papers. Inside were emails, timestamps, metadata, and 3 specific client pitches for our biggest upcoming projects: the Cloud Spire, the Monolithic Museum, and the Helix expansion. You recognize those, don't you? I asked. He stared at the documents. He did not speak. Allow me to summarize, I said. On every single one of those pitches, my name was on the original draft. I did the drawings. I did the calculations. I wrote the design philosophy. I pointed to the second page. But by the time those files reached the client, my name was gone. Erased. Replaced with yours. Jeffrey looked up. His face was pale, but his eyes were hard, defensive. It is branding, Phoebe. It is business. Clients want a singular vision. They want a strong lead. A male lead? I asked. He did not answer, which was an answer. You did not just mismanage the culture, Jeffrey. You monetized my erasure. You convinced yourself that my work was your property, because I was quiet, because I was a woman, because I was support staff. I leaned in. That is not branding. That is theft. It is intellectual property fraud, I said. And unlike a rude comment at a party, this leaves a paper trail. A very long, very illegal paper trail. Jeffrey slammed the folder shut. You cannot prove intent, he spat. I do not have to prove it to a judge yet, I said. I just have to prove it to the board. And the press. I checked my watch. It is 6:15. The board meeting officially starts at 8. You have less than 2 hours. I am not resigning, he hissed. I built this company's reputation. You built a facade, I corrected. And I am the one who knows where the cracks are. Here is the deal. You resign, citing personal health reasons or a desire to spend more time with family. You walk away quietly. You keep your stock options, but you lose your seat. And if I refuse? Then I release this folder. To the board. To our clients. To the Architectural Digest. I will burn your reputation to the ground so thoroughly that you will not be able to get hired to design a doghouse. I stood up and walked to the door. I am going to get a coffee, Jeffrey. When I come back, I expect your letter of resignation on the table. He did not say a word. He just stared at the folder, the weight of his own lies finally crushing him. 6 months later, the air in the Helix Tower felt different, lighter, cleaner. We removed the toxic elements. Jeffrey resigned that morning. The official story was burnout. The unofficial story, the one whispered in the break room, was that he tried to cross the architect and got buried under the foundation. 58% of the female staff who had resigned in the last 3 years came back. We restructured the review process. We put names on every drawing, every draft, every idea. Ownership was no longer a secret. I was standing in the lobby for the spring quarterly mixer. I was not wearing a jumpsuit this time, but I was not wearing a gown either. I was wearing a blazer and jeans. I did not care what anyone thought. Miss Phoebe? I turned. It was Nicole, Jeffrey's wife. She looked different, less armor, less makeup. She was holding a glass of water, looking out of place. I heard Jeffrey and I are separated, she said. Her voice was quiet. I nodded. I heard. Look, she said, shifting her weight. About that night at the gala, I wanted to apologize. I was. It was inexcusable. I did not know. She trailed off, waiting. Waiting for me to say it was okay. Waiting for me to absolve her, so she could feel like a good person again. I looked at her. I did not feel anger anymore. I just felt indifference. You apologized because I have power, Nicole, I said calmly. If I were still just the maintenance crew in your eyes, we would not be having this conversation. She flinched. I do not need your apology, I said. I have my company back. I walked away. I walked over to the corner where Rachel was standing. She was 16 now. She was holding a set of blueprints for the new library annex we were bidding on. How does it look? I asked her. She traced a line on the paper. The load-bearing wall here. It feels thin. I smiled. It is. Good catch. We sat down on the bench, heads bent over the paper, correcting the lines, reinforcing the structure. You cannot build a legacy on a lie. You cannot build a life on appearances. It always collapses eventually. But the truth? The work? The steel and the sweat and the name on the bottom of the page? That stands forever. If you enjoyed this story of reclaiming your worth, hit that like button and subscribe. And remember, never let anyone treat you like a guest in the house you built.